If you drive past a rural cemetery in New Mexico during the afternoon, it looks exactly how you'd expect. Families walking the rows, maintenance crews trimming the grass, the quiet respect of local history baking in the sun. But that sense of peace requires the sun to be up. Ask the watchman who works the night shift, and they'll tell you the quiet after dark doesn't feel peaceful. It feels expectant. When the gates lock and the cars leave, the grounds become active with things that don't need permission to be there. If you look inside the maintenance shed, you'll find a secondary filing system kept entirely separate from the public burial logs. We're talking about decades of handwritten county incident reports, police notes, and coroner statements that have been quietly sealed away from the public eye. For the county authorities, these graves represent a tactical conclusion, a way to finalize and seal events that could never be explained in an official report. The property itself is divided by a strict logic. Up front, you have the newer rows, pristine headstones and well-kept irrigated grass. But as you move further back, the terrain degrades. The ground gets uneven, the rows stop lining up, and markers become blank metal tags. On this topographical map, cross-referencing sealed reports lights up 4 distinct coordinates tied to the county's darkest files. These unmarked spots dictate the watchman's true nightly patrol route, requiring constant physical monitoring well beyond normal groundskeeping. These 4 locations reflect the physical reality of the county's hidden records, grounding a series of impossible events into the very dirt of the cemetery. To see the forensic footprint of these events, we have to walk the middle sections, specifically row 18 and row 11. These areas exhibit strange physical anomalies. Certain graves constantly sink and loosen, forcing the soil to be refilled, while other plots remain perpetually dry and dead, even when surrounding irrigation lines flood the grass. Row 18 contains a biological case from 1998. It didn't leave paw prints or hooves, but deep 3-toed tracks. The creature itself had a rigid spine, elongated front limbs, and a jaw structure that opened wider than its skull should physically allow. It took a coordinated ambush by 3 armed men to finally put the mutated canine down. They baited it with dead livestock and opened fire, but it still managed to bite Price before a shotgun blast to the back of its head stopped it. Price died from a rapid, necrotic bacterial infection days later, raving in the hospital about hearing goats screaming outside his second-floor window. Move over to row 11, and the threat shifts. In 2006, reports flooded the local sheriff's office about a man named Travis Delgado appearing in people's homes and backyards late at night. The problem was, the real Travis was accounted for at home, entirely unaware of his nocturnal double. Witnesses described the entity exhibiting deep, uncanny valley behavior. Its gait was terribly wrong, too smooth in some places, entirely stiff in others. Its facial features didn't quite hold together when it spoke. After the real Travis was found dead of blunt force trauma, a heavily armed police tactical squad lured the mimic to an abandoned structure and executed it with sustained, close-range fire. These middle rows function as the county's emergency dumping ground. The authorities quietly hauled the remains of both the biological mutation and the human mimic onto the grounds, hiding the bodies in plain sight right alongside their victims. We find an even older precedent in row 4. Here, the ground undergoes a deep, unnatural compression, forcing groundskeepers to constantly haul in fresh dirt just to keep the graves level with the rest of the cemetery. That heavy soil sits over a case from 1934. A team of county land surveyors was working the rough terrain outside of town when their camp was dismantled. Their pack mule's neck was snapped without a drop of blood spilled, and the men were stalked by an oversized, broad-shouldered creature. It moved with massive strides and crushed the surveyors' rib cages and spines with immense, blunt physical force. The local sheriff quickly mobilized a posse to hunt the entity down. They tracked it into a narrow mountain pass, found it cornered and injured, and unleashed rifle fire into its chest and head until it finally stopped moving. Instead of risking mass panic by parading an oversized cryptid through the populated streets, the sheriff established a grim procedural pattern. They loaded the carcass onto a wagon, brought it straight to the edge of the existing cemetery, and buried it in the exact same row as the surveyors it had just murdered. Notice this deliberate, unnatural curve in the back perimeter fence. In 1931, an excavation crew clearing this exact plot hit an unbreakable, perfectly smooth stone surface. It had no natural break lines, only shallow, intersecting grooves matching no known language. Before sunrise, a glowing-eyed entity emerged from beneath that stone. When the foreman fired his rifle directly into its chest, the creature absorbed the kinetic impact without bleeding. It moved with impossible speed, and by the time a rescue party arrived, the remaining 4 workers were dead, their bodies laid out evenly around the trench, all killed by simultaneous cardiac arrest. The town organized a massive response, but they quickly realized they couldn't kill it. Even after unloading dozens of rounds into the entity at close range, it refused to bleed out normally. So they resorted to brute force containment. They collapsed the trench, burying the indestructible entity under tons of displaced dirt, rock, and building material. The town laid out the entire modern cemetery directly over this exact coordinate, building a facade of normal grief to hide Ground Zero from the outside world. When you pull back and look at the topographical evidence, the graveyard loses its peaceful exterior. It becomes a highly orchestrated system of surveillance and isolation. The authorities chose this specific method because a cemetery is the ultimate controlled environment. It is the single piece of municipal land where digging is strictly monitored by the government, and where a night watchman is legally mandated to be on patrol every evening. The environment itself acts as a topographical early warning system. The unusually sinking dirt in row 4, the dead patches in row 11, and the loose soil around Nathan Price's marker indicate that the horrors contained below are shifting in the dirt. When you see the heavy iron gates and the reinforced perimeter, realize they are built for containment,